Hello everyone, welcome back to GGN. This is part 2 for this news bulletin today. It's Wednesday, February 13th, 2013 on Darko. My website is ggnonline.com and on YouTube is ddarko2012 and my other channel is ddarko2013. This first article I have is kind of a propaganda piece, of course. Obama pushes State of the Union proposals in North Carolina. So luckily I saved myself 30 minutes of my life by not watching this. But it says here, Obama on Wednesday flew to North Carolina to rally support for his new manufacturing initiatives. Our job as Americans is to restore that basic bargain that says if you work hard, if you're willing to meet your responsibility, you can get ahead. So a basic bargain, I guess that's, that's for the big corporations. You know what I mean? You want to be a good bargain for them and be a good little slave. And you'll get ahead in this brave new world. If you work full time, you shouldn't be in poverty. Isn't that interesting? He wants to increase the federal minimum wage to $9 an hour. Of course, he's going to not say that has to do with the Federal Reserve System and how it becomes more expensive to borrow and borrow as they borrow more and more and more, and our dollar becomes worth less and less and less. But also, what he's not going to tell you, this whole ObamaCare bill, what it actually will do is what? It'll force coerce employees into hiring more people, which will boost the unemployment rate, but then it'll do what? It'll increase part-time jobs. So part-time work, which we're seeing right now, I've covered that many times in different articles and different statistics, which is, it's permanent part-time employment now. And so you're talking about what? The ObamaCare is actually to fudge unemployment, to increase unemployment, but not in a good way. And also to what? It's going to create permanent poverty. So if you're in permanent, a non-full-time, permanent part-time, you're going to be in poverty. Unless, of course, you get 2 to 3 jobs, which is, I think, one of the insurance, well, I know one of the insurance companies, I just don't know exactly which one it is. I just saw the article yesterday, which was the insurance companies were actually advising people to start taking on 2-3 jobs. But part of the whole fallout of this wealth consolidation operation known as the recession of 2008 was what? Was to basically bring about cheaper labor, manufacturing labor. It's an example of the type of insourcing the president hopes to expand with his new manufacturing initiative. So the jobs are coming back. It's going to be like, pre-80s, where you had manufacturing jobs and stuff like that. Well, actually, what they're not including, too, is robo-sourcing, which is going to take a lot of people's jobs, even in China, where they're working for, pennies in India and stuff like that. You can go in here and check out this video, Obamacare Reduces Unemployment. I did that December 27, 2012. The links aren't posted in there because it probably had issues, technical issues. But I go through that argument there. Show this to anyone that believes that things are getting better in America. And, of course, Obama said what? We need to take steps right now to strengthen our recovery. That's after the heist. That's after the wealth consolidation, after they've pillaged people's pensions in their future. See, he cares about you, but also to build up our middle class, that is being diminished, right? But I don't think it's going to go completely away, possibly, because unless they don't need the middle class, I'm thinking that they do need the middle class as a cash hog or like a piggy bank, basically, that they can use them as a big bulk of debt slaves. So that they can keep borrowing and borrowing and borrowing. And you got Joe Biden and Boehner looking at him like, wow, you are just a good lying piece of shit, aren't you? How do you do it so well? Damn, this guy is good at lying. Okay, so back here, it shows how we've run up a national debt, and how we, collectively, we had a choice, of $16.4 trillion. It's the largest debt in the history of the world, and it's got more than 23 times larger since Jimmy Carter entered the White House. The chart that you see below is a recipe for national financial suicide from 1965. This is the federal debt, total public debt in the millions. Down there, less than $1 million or something like that. Then, of course, you have 2010 to right now, which is 16 million. Since Obama entered the White House, the U.S. government has run a budget deficit of well over $1 trillion every single year, and we have stolen more than $100 million from our children and our grandchildren every single hour of the single day. It's the biggest theft of all time. It says here that When Obama first entered the White House, the U.S. debt to GDP ratio was under 70%, and today it is up to 103%. It says if things are getting better, you wouldn't need to borrow so much money. It also said during the first term, the federal government accumulated more debt than it did under the first 42 U.S. presidents combined. So if you just started paying off just the new debt that the U.S. has accumulated during the Obama regime at the rate of $1 per second, it would take more than 184,000 years to pay it off. The bankers have helped create the Federal Reserve, intended to permanently enslave the U.S. government by its people, its employees of the corporation, to a perpetually expanding spiral of debt, and their plans have worked. It says at this point the U.S. national debt is more than 5,000 times larger than it was when the Federal Reserve was first created. Now, this is interesting. I didn't see this. It says, so why don't American people understand what the Federal Reserve System is doing to them? It's because most of them are still plugged into the matrix. A Zero Hedge article that I came across today put it beautifully. U.S. society in a nutshell. Chris Dorner has been around for a week and has 222 million results on Google. The Federal Reserve has been around for 100 years and has had 187 million results. Political economist says, I was disgusted by Obama's State of the Union address. So it goes on and says, I was disgusted by the statements from our president. Well, our so-called president, I think the country is on the verge of collapse, and it's up to the American people to stand up and say we're not going to be debt slaves to the criminals that run our country anymore, said Chris Dorsey, a political economist from Richmond, Virginia. Obama addressed many issues, including jobs and the economy. He said that after a grueling recession, or again, wealth consolidation operation, the economy has turned around and job numbers were rising. Quote, together we have cleared away the rubble of crisis and can say with renewed confidence that the state of the union, the state of our union is stronger. See, like that, it's ours, guys. No, it's your debt that you have to pay off, and it's their profits that they're going to privatize. Dorsey said that was far from the truth. Quote, the idea that the economy is turning around is ludicrous. It is an insane statement and flies in the face of all facts known to the American people. More Americans are living under poverty. More Americans are requiring government assistance to eat, end quote. Dorsey also pointed out that the real unemployment rate in America hovers around 25% as opposed to the official figure, which puts it around 7.9. Families will endure 15 more years of squeezed incomes under a return to better living standards. Families must endure 15 years of squeezed incomes until living standards recover to pre-crash levels, says a leading think tank. It means that someone who earned £22,000 a year in 2008 will have to wait until 2023 to get back to a similar standard of living. Had the downturn not hit, i.e. the wealth consolidation and the pillaging of people's money and their pensions and their futures not hit, a £22,000 income would have reached around £27,000 by 2023. But to reach this level, it says, incomes would have to grow by 3.3% a year, a level of growth not seen since the 60s. 10 million adults in the low to middle income group have been seen spending power decrease by an average of £280 a year, according to a report. The fall in earnings is being put down to a cut in benefits and tax credits and workers having to cut their hours. So it says 6 out of 10 in the middle to low income group are struggling to keep up with bills, with 7% behind at least on one bill. So yeah, it says up here that it's fallen sharply for even the richest Britons. We'll see, they can still pay their bills though, that's the thing. It says here, leading to the biggest decline in income inequality in the last 15 years. The decline in income inequality. I wonder if that's saying that there's less of a gap between the rich and the poor. I don't know if that's what they're trying to say, but if you look at people that were the richest 1% or 10%, they got richer. I mean, that is a fact. I mean, you talk about millionaires, yeah, they probably took a hit. But, you know, I mean, it depends on what you consider rich. I consider a multi-billionaire as rich. I don't consider a millionaire rich. I just consider him fortunate enough to be able to actually operate with this gargantuan bureaucracy that they have to deal with in order to conduct trade. The New York Times, Americans feeling the pinch of payroll tax hike, says though the economy may not have been brought to its knees, i.e. they didn't pillage so much that we don't even have any credit to borrow anymore, which again, I'm not really all for that to begin with, but some Americans are starting to feel the pinch of higher payroll taxes. They claim it is already affecting their spending. So it says the payroll tax break lightened the load of Social Security taxes by 2 percentage points in 11 and 12. But when it was eliminated as part of the fiscal cliff deal, many economists warned it would have an adverse effect on the economy. The new higher rate went into effect in 2013, says applied to the first $113,000 of earned income. It says economists estimate it will cost the typical American worker about $1,000 a year. So it goes on and says only in February, people with middle to lower incomes are already feeling the pinch, many claiming they have had to reassess their budgets to cope with the reduction in income. They report delaying the payment of bills, eating cheaper foods, and driving less. We have Bank of England warns Britons of deteriorating inflation. The governor of the Bank of England has issued a grim warning to British families on living standards and the squeeze which will last for 3 more years. Well, they were just saying 15 years. He said the recovery would not be smooth, i.e. you getting your standards of living back after they pillage. And it says here, this hasn't been a normal recession, this hasn't been a normal wealth consolidation operation, and it won't be a normal recovery, i.e. it won't be as smooth of a transition as far as you being able to borrow money in order to live or find a job in order to live. Food prices rise 3 times faster than the wages as the cost of living crisis continues. Food prices are rising more than 3 times faster than the average worker's pay package as the cost of living crisis continues. While the average private sector worker pay has risen by 1.4%, it goes on here and it says that workers are subject to pay freeze. Food prices have risen by 4.5% in the last year. It says the crippling cost of the weekly trip to the supermarket is the most striking figure. It goes on and it says that overall, they said the measure of inflation remained at 2.7% in January. A typical British family needs to spend an extra £678 a year to maintain the standard of living that they had a year ago. Venezuela donates free heating oil to 100,000 needy U.S. households from February 9th. It goes on here and it says that for the 8th straight year, Venezuela's state oil companies donating free heating oil to hundreds of thousands of needy Americans. The Citgo Venezuela heating oil program has helped more than 1.7 million Americans in 25 states and the District of Columbia keep warm since it was launched back in 2005. It's a program that is a partnership between Venezuela's state oil company and its subsidiary Citgo. Last year, President Obama and Congress reduced the Low-Income Home Energy Assistance Program funding by 25%, cutting off an estimated 1 million U.S. households from desperately needed assistance just as the winter's worst chill, accompanied by record heating oil prices setting in. It said, fortunately, the Citgo Venezuela heating oil program was able to assist 400,000 Americans last year. Then we have 90 million workers won't be needed by 2020, says study. So talking about useless eaters, tens of millions of people worldwide will be condemned to long-term joblessness and long-term part-time work unless see, here's the solution. Unless the global leaders in the international community act and make significant changes to address unemployment and worker training. God. A joke. We have the rapid growth in the number of low-skilled workers relative to employers' demand for these low-skilled workers is likely to create even more income inequality around the world, says the study. The polarization of incomes between high and low-skilled workers could become even more pronounced, slowing the advance in national living standards and increasing public sector burdens and social tensions. Some advanced economies, like the UK, Europe, US, Australia, less skilled workers could very well grow up poorer than their parents. And of course, they give you a nice fudged unemployment number. The world is already suffering from growing joblessness. 6% of workers worldwide are unemployed, which means it's probably about 25% if it's based off like how Americans, U.S. and the Labor Department does their statistics on unemployment. Portugal unemployment rises to record 16.9% in the fourth quarter of 2012. Remember in Italy about the guy that self-immolated, basically burned himself over the usury system, and it's how it just degrades people. French jobless man dies of self-immolation after setting himself on fire in front of the state employment agency. Then how in New York City the homeless pay $3,000 a month to live in tenements. The story takes the concept of slumlord to an entirely new level. It says here where homeless population is growing in New York City, some landlords are paying off their rent-stabilized tenants in order to overcharge the city on rentals for the homeless. In some cases, rents is being as high as $3,000 a month for a tiny room without a kitchen or bathroom. This is GGN and I'm Darko. Thank you.